Hard to imagine, for most of us probably, getting to that point where we say, perish the day I was born. I wish that it had never happened. But here we are looking at the book of Job, and that's the situation that Job is in. As you know, the Bible is made up of a group of books. The word Bible almost literally means library, and they're split into two halves. The first part of the Bible we call the Old Testament. A Jewish person would call the Scriptures or the Tanakh. The second half of the Bible we call the New Testament. And one of the books of the Old Testament, toward the end of the Old Testament, is the book of Job. As you know, if you've been around for the past few weeks, it's a book that tells the unusual story, but a story that most of us can relate to, of what happens when life appears to be very unfair and full of needless suffering. It's a story of what happens when things go wrong. And the story of Job is very extreme in order to make its point. At the beginning we meet the character called Job. He was, we're told, the richest man alive at the time, which was about 6,000 years ago. And as well as being rich, Job is a nice family man, honest, and what the Bible calls righteous. He lives a good life. Having been introduced to Job, then something very unusual happens. The scene cuts to heaven, where God is having something that looks like a management meeting. And in this meeting, the accuser, a character called the accuser, shows up. Some of us have been in meetings where someone called the accuser seems to have shown up and does all the talking. And the accuser says to God, Job only loves you and lives a good life because he's rich. If Job had nothing, then he would not love you at all. And God responds by saying to the accuser, basically, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. And he tells the accuser that he can test Job, but that he will discover that Job would still love God. And so the accuser does test Job. Everything is taken from him, all of his wealth and possessions are lost. And Job keeps on loving God. And then there's another management meeting, and again the accuser shows up and again says something like, well, yeah, of course Job still loves you. Money and possessions aren't very important. But if Job himself suffers, then he would stop loving you. And again God tells the accuser that he can do what he likes with Job, except kill him, and Job will still love God. And as a result of this, Job gets really, really ill. And so Job, in a very short space of time, has gone from being the richest man alive to having nothing. And now he spends most of his days scraping the pus off the festering and putrid sores that cover his body. I hope you have a nice breakfast then. And the rest of the story of Job is basically Job and his friends trying to work out why bad things happen to good people, or else wondering if Job in some way has been really, really bad, and so his suffering is something that he deserves. And then right at the end of the story, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone, God tells Job and his friends and us that they won't be able to work it out. Lots of things happen for reasons that humans cannot fathom. And then God gives back to Job everything he has lost and a bit more besides. All of which might make me think, wow, I didn't know the Bible was meant to be such a frustrating book. But if you think about it, the Bible is bound to be a frustrating book. It's a collection of writings that are all about life and purpose and meaning and humanity and searching for God. I still think that all of us at some point, if not yet, at some point in our lives will say, why am I here? And that's what the Bible is all about. And life and purpose and meaning and humanity and searching for God is a recipe for frustration, for mistakes, for unanswered questions and profound mysteries. And right in the middle of the Bible is the long book of Job, and it's mainly poetry, that's enough to put anyone. And it deals with perhaps the biggest question of all, the question that no one else was going to ask: why do bad things happen to good people? And if you read it looking for a nice neat answer, then boy, are you bound for disappointments. There is one thing you might learn, though, throughout this story of Job, as he has a good moan, as he questions and complains, but he never turns his back on God, no matter how bad it gets. Because Job knows that suffering is never easy, but it is easier to suffer with God than it is to suffer without God. Part of the story that we read this morning is the first time that Job does have a really good moan. And he says in very poetic, lyrical and a very emotional kind of way that he wished he'd never been born. Or failing that, he wished that he might die quickly. As we reflect on that difficult situation for Job, I want to ask you a different question. If you could imagine your best possible future, what would you think of? If you imagined your best possible future, what would you think of? Some of us might imagine England winning the Euros. Probably not. Some of us might imagine winning the lottery. Some of us might imagine ourselves being a little taller and slimmer. Some of us might imagine an event that happened in the past, and we might say, let's make sure that never happens. Some hurt that someone did to us. Maybe someone who we tragically lost. We imagine that that might never have happened, and that would give us our best possible future. Job has worked something out. And he does work something out throughout the book of Job. He loses everything. His possessions are taken. His children die in accidents. His security and future are gone. But Job eventually will realise that if he dies tomorrow, and where he is right now that feels quite likely, he knows that he will be okay because God is his friend. Imagine being a friend of God. Tomorrow someone might give you £1 million and you don't have to worry about money ever again. I doubt they will, but you never know. Someone might invent a pill that you can take that will give you the perfect physique and looks. It's unlikely, and even if they do, well, everyone else is going to take it and then we'll all look the same and it'll all be very boring. Someone might discover a cheap and easy cure for cancer. I hope they do. Somehow or other we might work together as we are doing and get rid of COVID. And I hope that happens sooner rather than later. But each of these things, a lack of money, not happy with the way we look or feel, even terrible and fatal diseases, they're only temporary problems. Even Job's problems, no money, ill health, are temporary. Because death does happen to us all. And oddly, there's good news in all that. The one thing that is good news about all that and the amazing and complex and impossible to work out story of Job is actually quite simple, although very profound. God gives us hope. God in Jesus Christ gives us very profound hope. And that's it. You and I need hope. God wants to save us and be with us, and that's the good news that God has done that. He has given us hope. He has saved us. However big or small your problems are, one day you will need God and God will be there for you. And it's tempting to perhaps wait till we die, but let's not. Let's have that day here and now. And so when I think of my best possible future, I'm not sure of what it is or what it involves. Like you, as I've gone on through life, when I was younger, I used to think perhaps it was money. I'm certain it isn't now. But the one thing it does always involve for me is that my best possible future involves God's. Anything else I build, anything else that is made from my own hands, any hard work I put in won't last forever. Any suffering, any difficulties, any challenges will pass. Only Jesus Christ is there for you and for me forever. Amen.